My name is Matty and I am an alcoholic. My sobriety date is March 31st, 1989. I am a member of the East Naples Men's Group.
Dilly dilly.
We meet on Monday nights at 6 o'clock for our beginners meeting, 7:30 for home group. Ironically, or magically, as it was said, the two men that picked up their medallions tonight are members of that group. See, we travel well. Most of us do anyway, but that's pretty good. And Denise, our 8 years. Congrats, Denise. Celebration is a special kind of thing. I mentioned I wasn't used to the medallion tour that South Florida has. You know, when I first got here, in Jersey, you have one home group, one sponsor, you get one medallion, and that was like that. And here it was, you know, everywhere you went, you were getting a medallion, and it happened to me. And, you know, and just recently, I've been here 6 years now. And about I mentioned, I acknowledge his wisdom quite often. And Pat and I are very close in time. And I said that to him, like sarcastically, trying to be humorously. And he had the wisdom, and I've repeated it before, but he said, the first one you pick up is for the newcomer. The first one you pick up is for yourself, to honor your time that you've just accomplished, which is tremendous. And the other ones that you pick up when you get up and speak, those are for the newcomers. I got to tell you, I'm not going to do it today, but first I want to thank Jimmy. I mean, where has 12 weeks come and gone? I have no clue. I'm reminded of when I was a young man in a little bit of trouble, and, you know, my dad, I was the oldest of six, so my dad would be, he was a drinker. I've mentioned that before. But at 17 years old, when he's telling me liquor should never touch your lips because of the things that were happened to me as a teenager. Picked up my first drink at 14, you know, and it would be these kind of things that would, you know, I wouldn't know what to do. But I got good direction and things from that. So it was, here we are at step 12. And again, I want to thank Jimmy. This group, I love this group, and I love the members in this group, and one in particular. And it's a great group to belong to. If you're looking for a home group, you might want to think about this. Sadly, the books are closed for women in the East Naples Men's Group. That's, you know, we still, once a year we're able to do that at our dinner. But I want to just acknowledge, if you've been here from the beginning, remember when I started off, I mentioned to you guys that as a freshman at Don Bosco High School, we would have these electives, right? And as a freshman, I took Latin, which is, you know, I still remember some things like that. And my second year as a sophomore, I took public speaking. And the main thing there was they teach you how to read the room. Remember, I said that on the first week. And then I asked how many people had under a year. And all you guys raised your hands. And I said, that's what this is about. That's how to read the room. Because this message is for you guys. You know, there's a lot of old timers here, but just think of the fact, there's guys with double, triple digit sobriety that are going to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 meetings a week. Why? Why is that? Because this is where the cure is. You know, we've recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body, but this is where the answer are. And I say it all the time because it's a fact. Sadly, most of you guys with under a year aren't going to make it. It's a fact. So be the one, be that one. Remember, I shared you that story as I'm about to be discharged from Century House. I was in a 28-day rehab program, April of 1989. And these two men came in, and you'll hear a lot, he told my story. And he talked about, remember I mentioned to you guys, that there's good news and bad news. And there was 32 of us in that rehab. And he said, out of you 32, 2 of you will stay sober. was like the hush fell over the room. And he said, and the bad news is only one of you will see 10 years. Russell talks about the fact that it's 1 out of 200, I think, is what he uses, sees 20 years. See, if you want what we have, you have to do what we do. I wore this tonight to end the thing. The 12-step program of Alcoholics Anonymous, this slogan, easy does it. There's difficulty there. You have to work to do this. But basically, if you just follow our suggestions, and as I ask all my guys, if you're in, you can have happy, joyous, and free, and my favorite words, contented sobriety. So as I said to all you guys, mostly on this side of the room from 12 weeks ago, if you made it here all 12 weeks, I really appreciate that. And if you've been here or anybody else for this time, I'm really honored by that fact. You know, this was my first time doing this, and I said to Jimmy, I was nervous as heck. Tell John, I said, you know, I mean, I can talk. I mean, that's never been an issue. But I mean, how am I going to do 40 minutes? What happens if I'm standing up there and I freeze and right back? I don't know what to do. And it's like, and then the first week when I'm not even halfway through my outline and I got about 4 minutes to go, I knew I'd be okay. So sit back, relax, and listen, and welcome. And man, I wish you all the luck in the world. We need you. We need you guys, and you, men and women. There's so much. I mean, when I go back to Jersey to visit my friends and family, and a lot of us are here, Colin's a Jersey guy, a lot of Jersey guys. The meetings are the same, but they're not. The fellowship is the same, but they're not. You know, but the message is always clear. It's the 6 words we live and die by. We trust God, we clean house, and we help others. And when I go back and see all my, you know, I have my, as I said every time, I always honor and acknowledge my home group back in Jersey, the Belford Clearview group. And I have still sponsees back there. And, you know, when I first got back, they would say, I would tell them, man, AA is alive and well in South Florida. You guys won't believe it. It's the same, but it's different, you know. And it's won me over from the first time I got here 6 years ago. When I finish up, I'm going to get into that in a little. But here we are at step 12. Who is the final contestant that's going to tell me what the principle of step 12 is? Thank you. Who said that first? Paul, yeah, I think you won like 5 weeks. All right. Maybe if you're lucky, Jimmy might have an extra bumper sticker for you, Paul. He'll give you one of those. But Paul's all in. He needs a bumper. All right. Well, we'll get you a sticker. So there we go. So
got to start somewhere.
That's it. That's very cool. See, we can laugh at ourselves, right? Paul has a great message, helps a lot of men. So here we are. Step 12 is about service. When you finish the last page on the chapter of before you get into working with others, it ends with, you know, faith without works is dead. I was told from day one the works, which is part of my, remember I would share with you what is God's will for me, and I use my WPLJ radio station acronym, right? God's will for me, right, Kyle? WNEW and WPLJ. WPLJ, you've heard me mention it often. God's will for me. Work, prayer, love, then comes joy. You get that, you get the joy. I was told early on, and it's just something that I live and die by. Everybody wants to be happy, joyous, and free. That's why we come here. But happiness is fleeting. You'll have it for a while, and then it goes. Joy is eternal. It will stay with you a lifetime if you do what we do. And that's the best part about it there. So, who can I ask today? Paula, would you read step 12?
Yes. Having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps,
We try to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs.
Beautiful.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you, Paula. The 12 step, like a lot of the other steps, are broken into parts. This is a 3-part step, step 12. Having had a spiritual awakening as the result of these steps. Sheldon and I were talking earlier, and he said, it's going to be step 12. It's, service, 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 which it is. But for me, it's always been the other part. The faith without works is dead. And appendage number 2, the spiritual awakening. That has been key in my life. My relationship with my God, and I share with you guys often, it's my faith from day one, how I was brought up, and as far off to the path of that I found myself many, many, many nights. It's my love of a heavenly Father, his Son, Jesus Christ, and a beautiful and loving Holy Spirit. My Trinity is what's kept me together. And again, I've always talked about Trinity, triangle, what our medallions have on each one. The perfect circle and the triangle. And to thine own self be true. See, here we are in that first part about spiritual awakening. And I did pay attention in the beginning, and I would ask questions, and you've heard me speak. I've had 4 sponsors. You've heard me week after week mention Ronnie Schreiber. I had a look, and I'm trying to remember when Ron passed away, and I can't believe. Anybody that knows me, I have a basket of books, my 24-hour book, which I got 36 years ago. And any wake that I go to, a lot of them are people in AA, but family and friends like that, I'll always take the prayer card and I put it in the day of my 24-hour book. Now, the 24-hour book is usually about that thick. Well, mine is like that. And like the big book, I have it taped. And like other books, I have one of my granddaughter's little hair bungees to keep it together. So I went back. I knew Ron died in February, and I scrolled through. It was February of 1996. I'm saying, man, just like today, where did 12 weeks go? But where's all that time gone? Hold on tight to your recovery. We'll say we wish you a slow recovery. It's not a joke. We mean that. But take your time, but get there. Because your job is to help the other that still needs all your help. So when we had the description of the spiritual awakening, I would ask questions. And again, I had known about Bill Wilson. When Bill had the experience, the white light experience. He's in Towns Hospital. I think it was at the Big Book seminar that I learned. Charlie Towns owned the hospital. Dr. Silkworth, like so many other men, lost a lot of money on the stock market crash, and Dr. Silkworth is running Towns Hospital. Helped between 40 and 50,000 alcoholics. And just think about that. 40 to 50,000 alcoholics, Dr. Silkworth. I think they said, Pete might know, I know Pat knows, I had heard, the rule at Towns Hospital is it was like one and done. If you were lucky, you might get a second chance. Well, this is Bill's 3rd stay in Towns Hospital when the white light experience comes to him. And that's what he got on his knees and said, show me your God, show me. And the room lit up. He couldn't see the wall. He felt he was on the summit. The wind blew through, and he was forever changed. We would forever change because of that experience. I've known men who've shared. Some of us are very close to us that have had that same kind of white light experience. 5 years in, when the book comes in, AA is panicking because people from all over the country that are trying to get sober are saying, we're not getting any white light experiences. And then they came in with Appendix 2, and you've always said, in my next life, I want to be a teacher. And it was the educational variety. William James said, it just comes gradually. Like my alcoholism came gradually, my recovery came gradually, that awakening comes gradually. Then the second part, when Jana does her steps, she'll break them down and then ask, point out the certain words. So the first one there was a spiritual awakening, right? The second part is that we try to carry this message to alcoholics, part 2. Well, what is this message? It's the service that we're doing. The message of Alcoholics Anonymous, at least for me, is how do I develop my relationship with God? I know men, some are very close to me. I've known atheists, I've known agnostics, I know people that won't believe in God, but they stay sober and they come to AA because they have a belief in a power. And it's not them, and that's the most important thing. I have my God. You can't have him. Right? So make, as Ebby told Bill, form your own understanding of the God of your understanding. Jim Burwell. Thank God Jim Burwell. They probably hated him there in the early days of AA, but if it wasn't for him, a lot of us wouldn't be here because it was then the God of our understanding. Right? And then the third part, and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Each week we spoke about the principles. A lot of times I'm able to understand. My mind is always open to hear new things. At our home group last night, the fellow who was supposed to chair was on vacation. So Joe Haney came in and he filled in. I knew Joe when I first got here, and then I got to know his story. Joe's an old timer. He's celebrating 30 years this month. But then I would come to find out he had like 10 years earlier, and he relapsed. And he spoke last night about that one word, relapse. And he was even explaining that he was doing all the right things, but the obsession to drink got so overwhelming that for that brief moment, he lost his way. And when I hear that, especially if you have a little bit of time, man, that's scary. That's scary stuff. I've shared with guys, and here's how quickly it could happen, accidental or not. When I get into a little more of the personal in a couple, and I'll finish that, it was the house in New Jersey that after my divorce, my younger daughter bought. And I have a pool and an outdoor kitchen and a little cabana and that kind of stuff. And all my kids they're young adults. I have 11 grandkids now. So they would entertain and party. And if you have heard me these last weeks, you know that I'm a neat freak. So I would go out after one of these parties in my house that they all invited their friends to. And it was a mess. So I'm starting to clean, and I would open up the cabana thing, and there's bottles all over. So I start cleaning up, and guys in my group said, I knew I wasn't going to drink. I knew at that point I wasn't going to drink, okay? Mm-hmm. So now I'm cleaning this up like that. And they were drinking coffee with peppermint schnapps. Well, somebody had a bottle of peppermint schnapps, and then they opened up, it was almost empty, but then they opened up a new one without finishing the old one. So I'm cleaning everything up, so I've got the funnel out, and I'm pouring the peppermint schnapps into the bottle. And there's about that much left at the bottom. Knee-jerk reaction, like there's a piece of food on the plate, and I just finish it. I'm picking up the bottle of peppermint schnapps, and it's coming towards my lips. And I stopped and said, oh my God, what did I almost just do? I wasn't thinking about picking up a drink. But what would have happened? I've had sponsees that were on business trips, and they had to entertain in the bar. The guy gave them the wrong drink, and they did it. And they call me right away. And we just said, was your motive to drink? No. You spit it right out and stuff like that. That's the sneakiness of alcoholism. Can come at you all way. And how do you defend against that? You defend about from working these steps. And here we are at step 12. The opening line, it's the famous line, right? Experience shows that nothing will so much ensure immunity from drinking as intensive work with other alcoholics. That's what we do. That's why you have a home group and get a sponsor, and then you start to sponsor guys. The best part of that part of the book, and if you're on step 12, you're starting to find out this sentence. And I want you to understand this because it's what happens. You wake up one morning and you realize life has taken on new meaning. How cool is that? You know, we've known that our malady was a fatal illness, but now life takes on new meaning. Our spiritual feature is our relationship now with God. It's a power greater than ourselves. And how does he do it? Well, all of us, to help the newcomer, we laid the spiritual toolkit at their feet. It's in our book. And what's in that toolkit? It could be, there's all different kind of tools that you can use, but the basic ones are always there. You join a home group. You get a sponsor. You work the 12 steps, and then you go and help somebody else. You follow with the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Again, this is, I told you guys, you know, Ron Schreiber, my first sponsor, I did the first 9 with. I'm down now in New Jersey, and my next sponsor was Bob Helmer. I said it was the Sandhog, and Bob and I would do 10, 11, and 12, as I've done with, I've always introduced, especially here in South Florida, and anybody, I just barely knew Jim Reedy when I got here, but Jim Brady was my sponsor for 18 years, my third sponsor. And as I got to hear stories of Jim Reedy, Jim Brady was my Jim Reedy, you know. Certain men are just a little bit, we all have clay feet, but some guys and some women are just on a little bit higher plateau than me and a lot of others. And it's not just automatically given, it's all those things that are done. The principle of step 12, the service, is done without anybody knowing. That's the beauty of it there. Jim and I do 10, 11, and 12, 10, 11, and 12, right? So, boom, you know, here we are through that. O'Keefe's quick. 1, 2, 3, triage, stop the bleeding. 4 and 5, upstairs, you're getting fixed. You've got to learn about yourselves. Step 6 and 7, you're developing a relationship with God. 8 and 9, you're repairing the damage. 10, 11, and 12, you're maintaining everything that you just learned. Step 11, I practiced from the moment I woke up, and you guys have heard me share that. And then step 12 is that working with others. Page 97, first time, when I heard Stevie B's story the first time, and he loves telling it, he had relapsed. He's at a meeting with his dad, Stan, who was a remarkable man. And he hears whom would become his sponsor, Russell Spatz, from the podium, and Russell picks up the Bible. And he starts to read Luke 10, 25 through 27, which is the Good Samaritan. See, here in AA, we play the Good Samaritan. No matter who you are, what you believe, what your social status, color, sex, gender, it doesn't matter. We play the Good Samaritan. Our job is to pick you up when you're on the side in the gutter and get you back on your feet. As all these men and women prior to me did that for me. The part of the Good Samaritan. And I love that. I've had that here. Before I even knew Russell, that was in the thing there. And the only condition is, and this is well before I got to East Naples, the only condition is for me to be the Good Samaritan is, again, those 6 words. Trust God, clean house, and help others. When we get into, on the end, on page 103 in the big book that's talking about working with others. Listen to this, because for me, I understood it. If you were occasionally, or when you first got here, would blame others, that's the only way I can say it. If you weren't accepting responsibility for your alcoholism, remember we talked about early on, you know, I could admit to anything. I'll admit that when I first got here, right, as an alcoholic, I'll admit to anything to get the heat off me. But it wasn't until I accepted. See, I can admit, but if I don't accept, then I'm going to drink. And that's what it is. You have to accept these 12 steps and the principles that go with it. Because it says on page 103, after all, our problems were of our own making. bottles, liquor, drugs was only a symbol. Besides, we have stopped fighting anybody or anything. We have to. Time out. I called a timeout. That inner peace came, and I stopped fighting. When I was drunk, I loved to fight. I was in fights all. Remember, I told you that. Many, many nights I ended up in the emergency room. Because with liquor in me, that egomaniac with the inferiority complex. But when I drank, I had to prove something. What? I don't know. But you pay the price. You pay the price. And then it ends up to be what we get to learn in the 12 and 12 as the joy of living. We find ourselves in that joy of living, now living in a new, magnificent reality. If you haven't heard of the phrase two-stepping, and this goes for our people that are new, and if you're in that year or under, and you're practicing the steps, they give you warnings. There's promises littered throughout the book from the beginning to the end. And then there's warnings. And one of the warnings, and I've known a lot of people that have fallen victim to this, and they call it two-stepping. You do the first step and the 12th step. And you're forgetting everything else in between. You're admitting that you're powerless over alcohol. Your life was unmanageable. But all the other work that's there, meaning that you're not doing enough of the work. And you'll pay that price if you continue to two-step. Because from that, if you practice all those steps, freedom from fear. Here's one of our chapters is that freedom from fear. Because there's no longer false pride. Some of the characteristics that the book talks about, and maybe you guys can identify with these, because I certainly can. And this is even now, we're in our 12th step. Our program is in full gear now. But our defects are there for our lifetime, myself included, many times. Alcoholics are these three things. And if you can probably, I know I can identify with it, because it happens occasionally for me now. Alcoholics are childish, sensitive, and grandiose. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Have you ever met a sensitive alcoholic? Come on. No names mentioned. Sensitive and grandiose. That was, what I talked about. You wanted that. I've always said I wanted to be norm. I wanted to walk into my bar. Everybody knew my name. My drink was always there. And I wanted everybody to talk about me. Because I was so fearful that you wouldn't like me. Now, the true friends, men and women that I've met over my time in AA, it's remarkable. It's remarkable. Who I once was, remember I said to you last week, he's dead. Who's here now in front of you, a man of integrity, at least I try to be on a daily basis. That's what we strive for. And we went into that, and Ray talks about, and again, I always listen to Ray. Listen to him today at the gym again. I do it when I know I'm doing these. You're sober now, you're in your 12th step, you're working with men and women, and you're showing them what you have. Because now we think and act differently. People see us. Who we once were, we're no longer there. Because why? Here's the key phrase that he used. Our spirit, for me as my soul, has been awakened. Spiritual awakening has been awakened. This power, my God, my Trinity, has restored me to life. The life I always wanted to live, and now I'm living that today by God's grace. And then he reminds us, hey, we all need jobs, we all need homes, Ray would always talk about the three things that fueled him in alcoholic thinking and in sober thinking: power, money, sex. We all love, speaking for myself, I love all three of those things. But what they once were and what they are today and how you go about getting them through our 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous is completely different because a new path has been taken. Material progress always follows spiritual development. The spiritual development has to come first. Ray would talk about he is a messenger. He is a messenger. Here's some personal, I'm going to end with this. I got about 6 minutes. And here's some personal things for step 12, my spiritual experiences. I've had many spiritual awakenings, excuse me. You know, I'm here 6 years this week, and due to a life-changing situation 6 years ago, and you guys have heard me, you know, I found myself, and I shared that story, I found myself on the road coming down to South Florida. I didn't know where I was going to stay. I found a place. I started West Palm Beach, and then let me go further south, and then I went down to Boynton, and then I went down to Delray, Boynton, and then I ended up in Hollywood. You know, I'm sitting in the Easy Does It Club. That's where this shirt is from. I was there my second day and won this in a raffle in the EDI Club in West Palm Beach. The message is the same, but the places are different. I cut down here, and after a series of things and different spiritual things that happened to me. And I'm going to tell the story because I like it, and it has a lot of meaning. A lot of my friends in my group, John is probably sick of hearing it, but it's the famous Florence, South Carolina story. And this will show you guys the power. When fear comes in and starts to eat away at your psyche or your soul, or if you find yourself picking up a bottle of peppermint schnapps and you don't know why, inadvertently, God will always watch out after you. And this is how this happened. That is the spiritual spirit that has followed me since I came into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. So again, my divorce is finalized. I'm waiting for grandchild number 9 or 10 to be born. I told my daughter as soon as her name was Carmela, she'll be, I forget how old she'll be, or Vienna, one of those two. And I said, as soon as she's done, I'm on the road. And I hopped in my car and I drove to Florence, South Carolina. I had called like 4 days before and got an Airbnb in Delray. I'd already been to West Palm back there and like that, and I've signed up for 6 months. So I'm driving. I was going to go straight through. I get tired. I pull into Florence, South Carolina, and Red Roof Inn. It's New Year's Eve. I left New Year's Eve of 2018. I pull into the Red Roof. I take my little night bag out. I go in. It's just getting dark. I go in. I get my room. I'm sitting there. There was a Olive Garden was their restaurant. So I go in to get something to eat. And it's me, the bartender, a busboy, and the waiter. That was it. And I sit down, I get my food, and now I'm thinking, you know, I just left New Jersey. I left my kids behind. I have to get out. I have to change my life. I can't continue to be what I'm doing there. The embarrassment, the fear, whatever it was, I needed to start over. So I'm sitting in there, and it wasn't like Bill at the Mayflower Hotel, but the bartenders cleaning up and making like that, getting ready for their New Year's Eve party. And I said to myself, man, I got to get to a meeting. Pulled out the phone, meeting guide, and there was one at 8 o'clock that night. So everybody knows how great I am on directions. So I put it in my phone, and I'm lost getting out of the parking lot. And I'm following this, and I'm driving up these hills in Florence, and it's pitch black, and there's no lights. And you're 2 miles out, right? And I pull up, and there's these Klieg lights, and everything is lit up. This beautiful old southern mansion lit up. They're having an alcohol. It's New Year's Eve 2018. The guy's directing where you park your cars. I park my car, I get out. The guy walks up, shakes my hand. So what's your name? I said, my name's Matty. Where are you from? New York or New Jersey? Like, how do they know that? How do they know that? So he goes, go on in, there's plenty of food. I go in and I sit down. Another guy comes, sitting there. Long tables. I'm the only one at the table. This old guy comes in, a little hobbled in. He comes in. What, does this ever happen to you? There's 14 empty chairs, and he sits down right next to me.
Yep.
Right next to me. And he says, hey, what's your name? And I told him, my name's Matty Freeman. His name was Sal. Is how you doing, Sal? Where are you from? New York or New Jersey? And he went like that. And now he's looking at me, and we start to talk, and I give him a brief history. And we're sitting there in the loneliness that I'm feeling, the uncertainty of what is my life going to be like now? Am I going to be able to make this, God? Please help me. Show me, am I doing the right thing? And then Sal says to me, Matty, where did you go to meetings in New York? And I said, well, New But West, Mustard Seed, 79th Street Workshop. And he looks at me and he goes, hey, Matty, I've heard you speak at the Al-Anon House about 5 or 6 times. Welcome and good luck on your journey. I'm getting goosebumps now telling that story. Out of that fear and loneliness that was there from my God, he gave me Sal. And then I got in my car that next morning and I started my life from South Florida. And it's been amazing. Simply the men and women that I've met, how my life has changed. It's amazing. I'm going to close with this. Bob Allen spoke the other night when he filled in for Saturday night. I normally close with Ray O'Keefe's. If you want to, I have 3 pamphlets in my book. A Member's View of Alcoholics Anonymous, Questions and Answers on Sponsorship, and the 12 illustrated steps of AA. They're in my book in there. The illustrated ones is when I used to bring my kids to the loft and they could color. They're sitting there as young kids and they were colored. I still have it. But the other 2 are there. And the Member's View is from the final book. The thing is from the scripture. And today happens to be the feast of St. John the Baptist. And it talks about when John the Baptist sends people to talk to Christ. Are you the real deal? And he goes and tells them the blind can see, the deaf can hear, and all that. And that Ray says it so eloquently, you just get chills when he talks about it. But knowing that tonight was going to be my last night, and I'm sitting and I'm in prayer and meditation just a couple hours ago before I was coming here, and people that have been to my house know I have a serenity wall. And when my son died in October of 2004, and at the Mass, a family friend, Father Jim Wiener, came, and he said to me, Matty, and I've heard him do it before, he sings the Beatitudes. Now, the Beatitudes are from Sermon on the Mount. There's 8 Beatitudes. And if I had a recording of how this man does it, it stunned everybody, and it stunned me. And then shortly thereafter, he sent me a framed picture of the Beatitudes, and guys that have been in my house know that it's there. And then those for me are so deep and personal that they're my promises. We read the promises at the night step when we're halfway through. But this is the God of my understanding that took me from the gutter, that got me on my journey, and I can't wait to see what the next whatever. A lot of us are in the 4th quarter. I don't know what's going to happen going down the road, but man, I'm just so looking forward to sobriety continued in South Florida. And these are my promises. This is what my God speaking directly to me is. And it's scripture, so I hope you're not offended, but it's what works for me. And this part is from Matthew, chapter 5, verses 3 through 10, and they're the Beatitudes. If you look up the word, and the first one is the Beatitudes, and they always start, there's 8 of them, and they start with blessed. Blessed is, as it says, a blessing, but it means happiness. And Paul Baker will love this. The other finite description that a lot of men use for this is fortunate. Blessed means fortunate. Right? And Paul always says, we are the fortunate ones. So here they are. These are what I'll sit there at times, and as I'm doing my meditation, and I'll just look at the wall and I'll read them. and that spiritual awakening will come. 5 minutes later, something might happen and I lose my shit, but it'll come. It keeps me calm in there. And here they are. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are they who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the land. Blessed are they who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the clean of heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called the children of God. And blessed are they who are persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Pretty powerful stuff, ladies and gentlemen. And again, I can't reiterate more the thankfulness I have to this man and to this group and to the men and women that I've come to know. And this time I've met some new guys here, and I hope they follow our path. And this has been my closing for the last few weeks, right? Ladies and gentlemen, please remember, try to always keep your eyes above the waves. I love you. Thank you.
Good job, man.